Reyhaneh Jabbari was charged with murder for stabbing a man she said was trying to rape her. Her trial was widely criticized as skewed and unfair. This story will show how the odds were stacked against her from the start. Her diary entries will tell her side of the story, and what's known of the trial, along with the case files, will help prove that she really didn't receive a fair trial.
I, Reyhaneh Jabbari, am 26 years old, with a hanging rope in front of my eyes. I once lived free from pain and suffering, in a home built with love and compassion.
جا کوچه داد چهارم، کوچه‌ای که خونمون بود، خیلی سربالاییه.
One day, Reyhaneh Jabbari was on the phone talking about her part-time job at an interior design firm. A stranger, Morteza Sarbandi, introduced himself and his friend Sheikhi. He asked if she could remodel his office. He told her he was a plastic surgeon. She was 19 years old.
He looked like any ordinary man that you see on the street, sit next to in a taxi, stand beside in a queue, or meet in parks and restaurants. You could imagine seeking refuge with someone like him if a guy harassed or disrespected you in public.
Weeks later, Sarbandi picked Jabbari up with his car to visit his office. His friend Sheikhi was in the car when Jabbari got in. Sarbandi stopped near a pharmacy while Jabbari and Sheikhi waited in the car. He came back holding a small bag and continued on. Unbeknownst to Jabbari, Sarbandi bought condoms and sedatives. When they arrived,
Dr. Sarbandi opened the door with his key, and I was shocked. It was not an office. This was a rundown residential flat filled with dirt and dust, filled with chaos. There were no signs of life. I left the door open. He probed me to make myself comfortable, but I was not comfortable. He probed me to take my headscarf off, but I was afraid. He returned with 2 glasses of fruit juice and immediately drank one.
Sarbandi drugged the juice with diphenoxylate, a laxative and pain reliever. Side effects include dizziness, loss of consciousness, and drowsiness. Jabbari tried to act normal and began taking notes on the space. Some time passed, and then
He had come closer. The sofa was now covered with a bedsheet. My mind went blank. My mouth dried up and my throat felt blocked. My eye caught the door. It was closed. My legs froze. I couldn't run. He was extremely close to me. Suddenly I got up, turned the doorknob, but it was locked. I couldn't get out. I banged on the door. I tried to scream, but my voice wasn't coming out. He mocked me with his eyes and said, "Where are you going to go? You can only leave here when I want you to leave." He put his arms around my body. His arms encircled my entire body. He lifted me up with half a turn, put me down on the floor. I only managed to whimper. Nothing else was coming out of my throat. He then put his cheek against mine and emphasized, "No one is here. No one can hear you." Then suddenly I saw a knife. I told him to please let me go and I would not breathe a word. He said, "What? You're going to stab me?" I felt so small. I looked at the knife. It was too small to even scare him. I begged him to let me go. I told him he was a religious man and to not do this to me. He started to move towards me. I moved back. He moved forward. I moved back some more. I told him to stop or I would stab him. He said, "Why don't you do it already?" He turned his back to me and taunted me. "Go hit me. I want to see how you do it." I raised my hand, and with all my hopes and my dreams in my mind, I stabbed him.
Sarbandi pulled the knife out of his shoulder and threw it at Jabbari. She grabbed the knife and ran to the door to try to break the lock. But Sarbandi's friend Sheikhi opened the door from the outside with a key. She ran out as Sheikhi walked in. Before leaving, she called an ambulance and waited till it arrived. A few hours later, she was arrested. It turns out that Sarbandi was a former agent in the Iranian intelligence service. He was found in a stairwell, 2 floors down from his apartment. He died before getting to the hospital. Jabbari spent the next 18 months in prison. She was tortured and coerced into confessions that judges later used against her. In her diary, she wrote that interrogators blackmailed her into admitting that she bought the knife used to stab Sarbandi. They told her that they would torture her 14-year-old sister if she didn't admit to it. The police report clearly states that she admitted to stabbing Sarbandi once with a kitchen knife she found on a table. She said she acted in self-defense for fear of being raped. The case should have been short and simple, but it was an ordinary person's word against a justice system determined to protect one of their own. Human rights groups around the world criticized her trial. Amnesty International called it flawed and unfair. The UN Special Rapporteur on Iran said that on several occasions he raised issues about the fairness of her trial, but never received any real answers from the Iranian government. The investigation focused on proving Jabbari's guilt and did little to find evidence that supported her claim that Sarbandi attempted to rape her. Jabbari's phone records and texts were dug up and scrutinized, yet not one of Sarbandi's phone records or texts are in the case files. Jabbari's family members, friends, and colleagues were questioned. Judges focused on her psychological makeup. They tried to paint her as someone who wanted to gain access and favors from the powerful. Not one of Sarbandi's family, friends, or acquaintances was questioned. Investigators claim not to have found Sheikhi, the man who was with Sarbandi when he met Jabbari, the same man who entered Sarbandi's apartment with a key as Jabbari escaped. The autopsy revealed that Sarbandi died of a hemorrhage. Despite the defense's pleas, no expert was brought to court to explain whether or not the initial stab wound was enough to kill Sarbandi. The final judgment mentions that Sarbandi bought condoms, but there's no mention of the drug Sarbandi put in the orange juice he served Jabbari. The court didn't even find a motive for Jabbari to have killed Sarbandi. The judge wrote that he relied on his own judgment for the verdict. He felt Sarbandi was a devout Muslim, that he would never attempt to rape a woman. He felt that Jabbari's relationship with the victim was not business but pleasure. As proof, he cited she had sexual relations with other people. He wrote that she was narcissistic and megalomaniacal, and that she stabbed Sarbandi out of anger. He even acknowledged that Jabbari had no intention to kill, but denied her claim that she acted in self-defense for fear of being raped.
واقعا حقیقت در این پرونده این بوده که قصد تجاوز وجود داشته ولی دلیلی نداشته که یک مرد 50 ساله دختر 19 ساله‌ای رو با خودش ببره توی آپارتمان خالی و آب میوه با مواد خواب‌آور بهش بخواد بده یا اینکه کاندوم در اونجا باشه، ملافه پهن بکنه، دست بهش بزنه و خیلی از موارد دیگه. من در تمام لایحه‌هام تمام موارد رو در میتونم بگم نزدیک به 20 صفحه مشروع اعلام کردم. تمام دلایلی که نشون میداد دفاع مشروع هست و قتل امن نیست، تمام اینا رو مطرح کردم، ایرادها رو گرفتم، موارد مختلف رو مطرح کردم، ولی متاسفانه هیچ کدومش دادگاه بهش توجه نکرد.
I think what Iran has did, it was quite lawful. It was a due justice process.
Iranian officials, including Mohammad Javad Larijani, head of Iran's Human Rights Council, made repeated public statements to justify the court's decision. They sometimes distorted the facts.
Part of the report was that there was evidence that was not considered, such as a drug being in a glass of orange juice. Her claim that she was, a confession was coerced out of her. There was a lot of specifics in that case.
Well, I know. No, we are not in a position to say that she was right or not. All of these issues has been raised in the court by herself, by her lawyers. It was heard over 7 years. Judges after judges, panels of 5 judges, 7 judges, 3 judges. So I think later on all the judges came up with the conclusion that she intentionally committed this murder and there was not a case of self-defense. So this was the judgment.
There's a lot I want to give you the chance to respond to.
But there are many flaws in the case that haven't been properly addressed. For one, Jabbari admitted to stabbing Sarbandi, so why was she under interrogation for 18 months? What additional information did investigators hope to get from her? Why weren't Sarbandi's phone records and whereabouts documented in the case files? How is it possible that Sarbandi's friend, Mr. Sheikhi, wasn't even found by investigators? What would Jabbari gain from killing Sarbandi? Despite these flaws, Reyhaneh Jabbari was charged with murder and sentenced to qisas, or retribution in kind, an Iranian law that allows the victim's family to decide the fate of the accused. Morteza Sarbandi's family chose not to forgive Reyhaneh Jabbari. On October 25, 2014, Sarbandi's eldest son pulled the chair out from under Jabbari's feet and ended her life. The flawed and unfair investigation shattered Reyhaneh Jabbari's family and cut her life short at 26 years old.